Hello everyone, here we are with another episode of our sound design with Ableton tips and tricks. Can we call it like this? It's a while, I've been pretty busy, so I'm sorry. I wanted to do this earlier, but it was not possible. So what I want to do today is to do a patch with a little bit of doing some granular synthesis using just simpler. And the idea comes from a Max Patch, historical Max Patch made by this amazing artist whose name is Nobuyasu Sakonda. And if you don't know who he is, you should really check him out. He did a lot of stuff, and he's also a very funny guy. Anyway, we are inspired by his work. And what we're going to use though is nothing from Max for Live, and everything is done in Ableton Live, as I said, with Simpler. So without further ado, the first thing we want to do is go to Instruments and get good old Simpler. Good old Simpler, yeah, I wish we could do this in Sampler, but we do not have the necessary controls. But we definitely can do a lot of cool things with Simpler. It's a great little sampler machine. Sorry for the tricky voice, for the tricky concepts, but it's actually a sampling machine. And it's very simple and can do a lot of stuff. So first thing is first, we need to keep Simpler in classic mode. And we are gonna group it into instrument rack. So you can do it grouping Control G or Apple G if you are on PC or on Apple, on Windows or Apple. And here we are. And what we need to do is manage start, loop, length, and fade with just two macros. So I will try to teach you this or to share what I learned by myself or with the help of other people, but of course I want to share some information. So if we get some content, you can get anything. I just have some, what can I use here? Something, yeah, which has a lot of transients just to harp. Well, let's see. Okay, here we are. Just this harp sound, and this is how it sounds in the moment. And it stops here. What we want to do is with two controls manage this section here, actually not really this, but this, and this, but of course we need to activate loop. So if you go and check what happens here, if I do loop, it's actually cutting the beginning of the sample. So I need to, at the same time, change this, and I want to insert some fade in. This is going to act like an envelope, an amplitude envelope, which will allow us, together with this snap control, to avoid clicks, because we need a very quick looping of a very small portion of the sample to do granular synthesis. Usually a grain can be from a few milliseconds to 100, 150 milliseconds. But we're going to use it in a not canonical way, which is kind of cool, no? I hope. I believe. And we also want to move the sample around. So what do we have here up to now? By the way, I'm using an external keyboard controller to trigger the sample. So if we start, instead what we want is something like this. Okay, so we're gonna leave fade at 50%. And we're gonna map start to macro 1, which is the beginning of the loop, and loop to macro 2, and length to macro 2. And here now comes the kind of difficult part. What we have to do is we have to map these controls. So sample start, we leave it like this. Okay, and the sample length, uh, sample loop length, we're going to leave it at minimum 50%. And now what happens is we're going to use this and we're going to put it at 90% and 90%. Why? Because we're going to layer several of these to create some thickness in the granular texture, which is actually the great thing of Nobuyasu's patch, Max patch, is that he layers, if I remember well, is something which is quite old in technical term, but still pretty relevant. It's minimum 8 voices. So we're going to try to achieve thickness from a textural level, layering several simpler voices inside this instrument rack. And what we're going to do is we are going to slightly change the beginning of the sample and the end of the loop. Okay, so yes, let's proceed. So we did this, and up to now it sounds like this. Okay, but we also want some other controls. Um, let's see what we can do. First of all, we're going to deactivate the filter. Why are you deactivating the filter? Because if we have many voices playing at the same time, layering, and we can also use chords, etc., etc., we're going to have a lot of filters, which at the moment we don't really need, and we will use just one filter at the end. At least this is the plan. So what we want to do is some controls, and we want to, first of all, velocity volume translation, we want to raise it up to 70%. So the stronger the trigger, the louder the voice will be. Then we want to map transposition. Yes. Oops. No. Sorry, guys. We want to map it here. 0 for the moment. And we want to also map the LFO to pitch, but we want to control this value. So we're going to patch it here. So, okay, perfect. What we want is default panic, and this will get clearer later. The LFO patched to the panning with a value of 75%. So the thing is moving in space, and a little bit of volume modulation, so 25%. Okay, so these are kind of values which you can change by yourself. You can modulate them a little bit voice by voice. For the moment, we're leaving them standard. And we don't need control. These are fixed. Okay. What we need control of is the LFO speed. Okay, so what we can do is that we could actually map this thing to macro 5, and yeah, let's do it musically synced. Okay, so map to macro 5, and we need a dynamic control of the volume of the voice, of course, and an attack and a release. So I usually, in every synth I build or kind of thing, I started to standardized what I have mapped in the macros. Of course, here we are in Live 10. I have only 8, but usually what I use is 7/8 for attack and release. And we can definitely put the decay at 200 milliseconds, okay, and leave the sustain at 1 for the moment. It's 0 dB, 100%. So we are gonna go again in the mapping mode. We're gonna go here and we're gonna start at 1.5, 1 bar and a half, and we're gonna lower this at 16. Okay. Okay. We like it. Perfect. Fantastic. Okay. This sounds good to me. For the moment, of course. So what we want to do is then layer these voices. This is voice number 1. I'm just leaving it like this for the naming, but maybe shall we call it like this? Voice 1. Okay, we patched all the controls. I think we can go on. Can we? Yes, we can. Yes. Okay. Control D or Apple D. And we duplicate this voice. I'm gonna change the color just for the sake of clarity, and I'm gonna rename this voice number 2. Okay, voice number 2, though, what we said is we want to layer. And at the moment they're playing exactly the same thing, which is doesn't make really sense. Okay, so what we want to layer the situation and try to avoid clipping at the end of the signal chain. So what can we do? We have to go again in map mode, and we want to map our start. Hello, here we are, and we're gonna start 2.5% later, and we're gonna shift this at 92.5, and also length 92.5. Oh, sorry, 92.5. There we go. So if we go and watch what's happening here, we can see that there's a little bit of difference in the sample start and the sample duration of the loop. Okay. Okay. So it's kind of dynamic and layered. We start layering and layering and layering and layering. So what else do we need to map? We need to map the LFO, which should be a little bit different. Why? Because, yes, why not? So it creates a little bit of movement. Okay, 24. Very good. Now, let's proceed to a new voice. Control D, and we will call you, give you another color. Let's go to greenish. No, that's practically the same. Okay, so we stay in this yellow greeny theme. What we want to do is rename it. Voice 3. And again, back at the beginning, we start. Where are you? 5%. Loop 95%. Length 95%. 95%. Okay, so let's see what is the magic. I hope it's happening now. Oh no, the LFO we need to change, and this is gonna be a little bit faster. This is 3/4, dude. Yay, 132. Okay. For the moment, we're using a sine wave as LFO waveform. For the next layers, we're going to start to change also this. So let's listen what's going on. One voice. Okay, let's make it shorter. This is too long. We don't really realize. Sorry, that was a bit loud, but well, we patched this volume control exactly for these occasions. What's happening now? If you heard this singularly, individually, these loops, these grains are focused in one area, and they difference each other for just a small amount of time. We're talking about, look here, check it here, really like 50 or 100 milliseconds. But starts to get a little bit more interesting. Okay, so let's do another one. Control D. Which color are you here? Well, let's start to get a little bit green flashy. Okay, voice number 4. Perfect. again here. Let's map you. Okay, 7.5%. 7.5%. Loop. 97.5. Length 97.5. Okay, and your LFO, here you are. We're going to start a little bit faster here, and this is going to be pretty faster, yes, if we want to make it faster, of course. Yeah, so at this point I would proceed directly with, oh, I want to change waveform. Oh, let's do first this. Control D, Control R, voice 5. Okay, 5 voices start to get interesting. We arrive at 10%, and guess what? Here we are at 100%. Of course, these are values which I've decided by nose experience, but you can try whatever value. The important thing is that they differ a little bit voice per voice, and 2.5% is a good starting point. You can even risk 1%. Risk is a big word, but to make the thing a little bit more interesting, it's just to have the thing which moves a little bit during the length of the sample of the chosen sample. So did we change everything? LFO. This, shall we keep it the same? Why not change it? Or maybe we can keep the speed the same. So what happens is that with this situation, the funny thing is that we're actually changing values with one macro. These are going to be different for every guy here, and this makes it even more interesting for the movement of because we mapped volume and pan to the LFO. So this is going to have a little bit of movement from a intensity point of view per grain, and it's going to move in space with a different speed, and so it's going to occupy a little bit space a little bit more. But to make it even more interesting, we're going to change waveform here, make it random. Okay, let's change color just because we are using, yes, here we are, and let's add some panning too. So I would like to use voice 1 as the central voice, and gradually split up the sounds a little bit on the left and on the right, the grains on the left and on the right, adding also modulation via LFO. So we distribute them a little bit on the stereo panorama, but also keep the movement at the same time. Yeah, so I would say minus 15. Ooh, sorry, wrong one. Here we are, minus 15, and these are even a little bit more accentuated. So minus 25 and 25. Okay, so let's hope let's start lower, and let's start like this. All together now. Sorry, sometimes I really should behave myself. Anyway, we start to get some interesting granular texture. And it's only made with live. Let's add a little bit of pre-built reverb. Maybe we can get some release. A little more. Get some attack. Okay, that's fun, but let's see actually what we can do. First of all, because it's simpler and because we have a lot of voices, what we can do, which can be pretty funny here, is that we can layer voices with a chord. So note 1, note 2. Okay, that starts to sound interesting. And what about? Okay, so but we could also do something else, which is the great thing of simpler. We can actually change sample per voice. So let's see. So boom, bar, general fiddle. Well, you can use tier this or move this. Okay. Why not? Just throwing inside stuff without really even. It's not, who cares? In the sense that we're trying to demonstrate the point here. So let's see. Just remember who was at the beginning. Okay, now all together now. Yeah, so you can get some pretty interesting texture, but not only. Let's try something else. Human. Oh, let's see. Let's have fun.
Axis of weasels.
This is funny. Okay, so just because we really want to. Here we are. Okay. Did I change the first one? So. Ooh, legacy kind of stuff. Okay, here comes the fun part. Since we're talking Ableton, we can Control B, sorry, we can do like this. So Hello. Or or let's see. Okay, it can become crazy and very funny. So again, of course, what you can do at the end of the day is you can get some audio effects. You can go here, auto filter, and yeah, you can actually, what you can do is, I usually do this. I group auto filter, and because I tend to use a lot of racks, so I map everything to have a kind of CPU management system, and usually when I use auto filter, I tend to do this. If you put minimum at 127 and minimum at 126, what happens is exactly this. Sorry. When let's put some resonance up here. When you go down, when you're fully up, and I don't need uh, filtering, the filter is off. Otherwise, it's on as soon as I move down. So, okay, you can have a lot of fun. We will have an episode, I hope soon, on how to create mega reverberating, distortion, self-generating audio effect racks with automatic on and off situations. I hope this was helpful and at least fun. For me, it was because I always have fun in doing this stuff, and it's like good to make some to go through some concepts. But remember how powerful simpler can be and can be used for a lot of things, from typical uh, drum sounds, but also to do granular synthesis. At least in my opinion, of course. Let me know what you think, and if you like this video, subscribe to my small little channel. Ciao!